International Evaluation. I'm the president of the International Evaluation Academy. It's really good to have you with us and a chance to go through some of this important work that we have been discussing. For those who don't know, the Academy is a group of people who are very committed to how evaluation can contribute to addressing the polycrisis. And this is talking about some very important work we've been doing over the last year to try and understand how evaluation can contribute to addressing the polycrisis and how we actually get there. So okay, there we go. So the objective from this session is that the wider evaluation community is aware of what has emerged from the 3 Horizons for Evaluation Initiative work, and we'll explain what 3 Horizons is about. Hopefully you will feel committed to the sort of shifts of the evaluation field that we're coming up with. And what we're going to ask you to do is to sort of identify some of the initiatives that you know about, which you think are helping us to make that shift, because we want to build on the good work that many of you have been doing already and try and make sure that that contributes to this very different future that we need if we're going to have a safe and just planet. So what we're going to try and do, and the slide's moving very slowly, I'm afraid. Yeah, this is really problematic.
I've taken it back in.
Okay. Okay, do you just do the next slide then, Ian?
Yeah, there you go.
So what we're going to do is we're going to have Ian Kendrick, who will, and I'll introduce the different people in a minute, will introduce us to 3 Horizons so we know where it comes from, we understand what process we've been doing over the last year. And one of the really interesting things is we've been innovating in how we use AI to help us in this process. And Silva, who's been really unbelievably helpful in this, will give us some guidance and reflect on what we've done over the year. And then we're going to talk about the different horizons. We mentioned 3 horizons. There's a horizon for the current situation, a horizon for the future we aspire to, and a horizon for how we get there. And I've got Sonal there. Sonal unfortunately is ill, so Scott has stood in for her. Thank you, Scott. Sibongile will take us to where we want to be, and Angelisa will take us through how we get there. And then we're going to do a Mentimeter exercise just to reflect on what emerges for you on what you've seen. We're then going to go and try and unpack what are some of the initiatives that you know about where there is transformational work that's already happening, which can contribute to making this future a reality. And Jen will introduce us there, and Ian will be capturing this on Mural. And then I'll talk about the next steps and how we take this work forward and close. So this is an hour-and-a-half session. And with that, I'm just going to then introduce the speakers, Ian. So Ian has been the lead facilitator of this process. He's a founder of H3 University, H3 Uni, which has been supporting this process. I mean, supporting the use of 3 Horizons over many years. He has dedicated an immense amount of time to support this process, and we're extremely grateful, and it's been a great journey with him. Zenda is not with us today, but she may pop in later. But she's been key. She was the original champion for this initiative. She's an Academy friend and a specialist in evaluation and transformation. She's been providing a lot of the intellectual guidance for this and has played a key role. Silva, I mentioned. Such a pleasure working with you. Sibongile has provided support over the year. She's an Academy friend and has done real work to help this initiative. Andrea Lisa, who's the president-elect, will be president next year and is from Canada and and also on the Ibel Partners and IOCE executive. Jen Norrens, who's the Samir chair and also an academy friend, works for Myatt Africa. Very involved in the initiative over the year, as has Scott Chaplow, who was a former board member, now a friend, very involved also in a special edition of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation we're getting going. So this is the sort of group which has really masterminded taking this work forward over this year, and most of them are going to have some role in the session that we actually have now. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to talk through the 3H EI process.
Thanks, Ian. Three Horizons Evaluation Initiative is what 3H EI stands for, first of all. It's been quite a considerable process. I'm going to talk you through a brief introduction to what Three Horizons is all about, and then show you the process that we've used, and then show you one of the outputs. And after that, I'll pass across to Silva to talk about AI. So here we go. Three Horizons is often just thought to be about futures thinking. It's actually about more than just futures thinking, but let's just position it in the futures thinking field. When you're looking at futures thinking, first thing to consider is how much agency have you got to actually create a future that you'd like to have, or actually how little have you got, and that future is going to be created by other people with much more agency than you have, and you're just going to have to live in it. Okay, so that's about the uncertainty of what's happening. So these two axes are agency and uncertainty. At the bottom left here, I'm afraid it's a 2x2 matrix. It's a Boston matrix, but it works quite well, I feel. At the bottom left is forecasting, when actually the uncertainty is low, so you're quite sure where you're going, and you haven't got much agency. You can just say, next year we're going to do 2% more than we did this year, or things like that. And that diagram is a Bank of England downgraded its growth path, its growth forecast for the year, based on what's happening outside. The next one is at the top here, where you have got high agency. And this is the type of thing that you get from software companies who tell you what their next release is going to be, what bugs will be fixed, and what new features it will have. They know what they're doing, they plan for it, they've got the resourcing to do it, they can be fairly confident they can deliver it. Bottom right is about scenario thinking, which is where the uncertainty is high. Not quite sure where this world's going to go. And your agency is low. You're going to have to live with whatever is there. This way of doing scenario thinking goes back to the 1970s and is very powerful when you are just saying, well, whatever happens, we're going to have to live in it, and helping you figure out what you need to do today and tomorrow and how to get there to be able to survive and hopefully thrive in whatever the future brings. Top right is where Three Horizons sits. This is where the uncertainty is still high, but you have a bit more agency because you've got a community around you or of which you are a part that actually can increase their agency. And Three Horizons is very specifically designed to help the entity that's running this work increase their agency. Now, the work that we're doing with the academy is actually to look at whole field of evaluation and how might that be transformed and how might we help to transfer it. The we here is not just the academy, it's the entire field. So this is not the academy doing it for the academy's sake. This is the academy almost sort of sponsoring this initiative on behalf of the whole field of evaluation. So let's look at Three Horizons. Axis this time, left-hand side, vertical is about fitness for purpose of the way we do things. Horizontal axis is about time. Often we look at 20 years or 10 years, sometimes longer, sometimes less. This time we're looking at it 10 years out. The first one is Horizon 1. Right now, it's pretty fit for purpose what it's doing, but actually it's degrading. Why is it degrading? Because the environment keeps on changing. And if we don't change what we do, are we actually maintaining what's referred to as our structural coupling between the academy and the overall field of evaluation and the environment itself? So H1 is always degrading. Here is H3. We'll come back to H2 in a minute. H3, so H1 is where are we now? H3 is where are we trying to get to? So what we're going to try and do with this Three Horizons work is imagine an aspirational future where the issues that we see in Horizon 1 that are weak or becoming inappropriate and becoming more inappropriate have been addressed. When we talk about Horizon 3, we tend to talk about it not in the future tense, but while we're talking about it in the present moment. This is what it's like now in the future. It's like this now. This has changed. That's happened. Okay, so that's what Horizon 3 is about. This is Horizon 2, the journey between out of Horizon 1 and to Horizon 3. So Horizon 1, where are we? Horizon 3, where are we trying to get to? Horizon 2, how are we going to get there? And the how are we going to get there is always the biggest question with the most doubt in it. The reason we do it in H1, then H3, then H2 sequence is to sort of bookend Horizon 2. If we don't know where we are and we're not clear about where we're trying to get to, how can we possibly figure out how we're going to get between those two stages? So what we're really looking for is initiatives that we might refer to as Horizon 2 initiatives that are, excuse me, somebody else arriving, that are initiatives that are able or have the potential to help us move out of Horizon 1 and towards Horizon 3, to transform how we do things. We split those into two types. The first one we refer to as Horizon 2 minus initiatives. These are initiatives that get captured or will likely get captured by Horizon 1. Horizon 1 might capture it to close it down. It might capture it for the intellectual property to maintain its own life, and so on. But Horizon 2 initiatives, we think they might just be vulnerable to that kind of thing. The ones we really want to find are Horizon 2 plus initiatives that we feel have the potential to pull us actually towards Horizon 3. And a lot of this webinar we're doing today, as Ian has hinted at, is actually to try and find those Horizon 2 plus initiatives. The reason we look for those is that if we can figure out where they are, we might be able to connect them and to help them emerge into an overall system that might therefore be able to transform the whole field itself. That's fundamentally what this work is about. The last thing here, fundamental point about three horizons. Unlike some ways of thinking about the future where you have one horizon after the next, with these three horizons, all those three horizons are present all of the time. And they have different relationships to each other. So at the very beginning, horizons 2 and 3 are just starting to emerge. Horizon 1 is dominant. As it moves through, it gets to a crossover point with Horizon 2, where actually some of the Horizon 2 initiatives are starting to displace what's happening in Horizon 1 and actually improve Horizon 1. By the way, this is not about tearing down Horizon 1, because one of the questions we ask is, what things do we need to keep from our Horizon 1 and possibly even amplify, make bigger? Because even when we get to the end of the journey, of this 10-year journey, there'll be some aspects of Horizon 1 which are likely still to be there. And similarly, when Horizon 2 and 3 cross over, that's when this transformation is really starting to happen. So that notion of all three horizons being present all the time is rather important. Now, let's look at the process we followed for the Academy initiative. We issued a 3 Horizons survey to around 100 selected participants. We had 39 respondents who generated around 1,300 individual comments, stroke answers. A core team of 18 analysts then grouped those 1,300 comments into clusters. So, oh, look, quite a few people are pointing at this, we'll put those together. Quite a few people are pointing at that, we'll put those together, that type of clustering. And then we brought the clusters together into overall themes. So we're sort of panning out from the 1,300 responses and trying to see the overall pattern in those 1,300 responses, while at the same time maintaining the detail. Nothing is thrown away. And if we need to, we can track back and say, what was that? What did that comment? Where did that comment come from? Number 249? Oh, it came from this person. They're kept anonymous completely, but the core team can identify who said that because we might need to ask for further clarification. We then prepared systems maps. A while ago, while doing this work, 7 or 8 years ago now, I was challenged by somebody who said, this is all very great stuff, we love it, but can we please have a system map of each of the horizons, of what's happening systemically in each of the horizons? What's happening about the causality? What's affecting what? What is improving something? What is denigrating something? What is contributing to something, and so on? So we've actually done systems maps to show those causal links between all the themes. And then the maps themselves have been updated quite a few times now by friends at SAMIA conference, at the Ideas conference, at a Climate Smile workshop, and with webinars we've given. And in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've updated them for particular perspectives, which we'll talk about as we go through this presentation. The maps are refreshed, and they have been refreshed to clearly include Indigenous and intersectionality, 2 critically important issues that we want to see fully addressed in our third horizon. And AI has been used at various steps of the process. Let's look a little bit deeper. Process step 1, the survey. We collected them all into a big spreadsheet. We would then summarize them by ChatGPT. Silver helped us do this with extreme rapidity and efficiency, I have to report. Really sort of came back almost straight away. They were summarized. But we then asked people to review what ChatGPT had said, because we wanted to sort of have a comparison of what humans said compared to what ChatGPT said, because that was part of our learning process. And then they were then reviewed, edited, and distilled in the version used for the work. So this is a real input here. R11 is respondent number 11, who said, bringing multidisciplinary and diverse insights to the design of evaluations and interpretation of results is useful and should become a requirement. Using systems maps to interrogate theories of change should be amplified. There's an awful lot in that. We want that sort of separated out into subpoints. This is what this bit here, if you can see where my cursor is, the middle column, is about how ChatGPT summarized this. And it now says, Horizon 1, question 1, that's what this question was about. Respondent 11, we now have A, multidisciplinary and diverse insights should be brought into evaluation design and result interpretation becoming a requirement. Response B, for the same question, now amplify the use of systems maps to interrogate theories of change. On the right-hand column is what the human being said after they'd reviewed what the ChatGPT said, and we've used the right-hand column. Now, remember these if you can. I'll point it out, but H1Q1 R11A, H1Q1 R11B. Let's look at the next step, which is where we actually converted them into clusters. Each square is a response. Down here, if you can see my cursor moving around, is Horizon 1, question 1, R11A. And here is R11B. So what you're seeing is how those individual responses get distilled down with ChatGPT and human interaction, then brought into clusters, which now has amplified diversity of methods and approaches in evaluation and adaptive evaluative tools. Okay, those are the clusters. Next, we zoom out again. Now what you're seeing here, these two deeper pink circles, are those cluster titles, and now brought together with other responses. All these other responses here are from the overall question itself, Horizon 1, question 1. Now we've got a title that says Adapting Evaluative Tools and Practice to Amplify Power of Users, Local Stakeholders, Addressing Complexity and Context. So that's the next step. Then we zoom out again. Now what we have, that whole cluster is now, that whole cluster of clusters, as it were, is down here as a major theme. And this is the overall response for Horizon 1, question 1. We produce a systems map, which looks quite familiar if you're used to them. However, trying to communicate that system map to either people who aren't used to looking at these kind of diagrams or weren't actually part of putting it together can be a difficult process. And when we were challenged about producing a systems map, we were also challenged to how to make it more communicable and easier to understand. The result is this. This is exactly the same as you've just seen. Actually, it's not, because this map that you're seeing on screen right now is very, very current. It's about 3 or 4 days old and is more refreshed, reviewed, and updated compared to the other one. What you're seeing here, however, is an important point. I just want to drill on for a second or two. The grey squares here are what we refer to as the deep systems. Horizon 1 might be, where are we? But how did we get here? What are the deep systems that have driven our environment to produce this Horizon 1? I'll leave it for the team to introduce this map fully, but I just wanted to show you this is the kind of map that we produce. Okay, and as you've seen, we can back deeper and deeper and deeper if you want to go back to say who said what and so on and so forth. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to go to how we've applied AI, and I'm going to go remote controlled and I pass it to Silver. We're trying to pass the remote control of who actually drives the slides. If it doesn't work, because sometimes it doesn't, frankly, sometimes it doesn't, I will grab it back again. And Silver, it looks like you've got it.
He's got it. So AI, we use it. And of course, there is a temptation, you know, if you are a AI person, it's just, why don't you just put on all the data in and see if you can get it out? And actually, I could have done it. So I process and reprocess all the data you saw at multiple stages and trying all sorts of things. And just before this presentation, I basically just put the data back in and I ask, hey, out of Horizon 1, can you identify the meaningful cluster and visualize how they are interconnected? Now, Of course, there are some difference from the map that came out and significant, and we will discuss that. But I just want to make the point that where the AI is now, you can go from data set to map in the same prompt and, in basically 5 seconds. So how did we use the AI? Did we use it to produce the maps in this way? I'm hoping that the next slide can come, but okay. We didn't. And the choice was to basically have 2 parallel processes where we try to explore how AI could really work as a companion. In some cases, we try AI and we saw, will the humans do the same? Or in other cases, you will see, we use AI to try and amplify discussion, ideas, rerun analysis, seeing them from different perspectives. So all in all, this became quite an interesting way to try AI. And why that? Because it comes out in the data set that artificial intelligence and technology will have a huge role in transforming evaluation. So in a way, trying to analyze them, trying to use them for analysis now is a way to try and build one of these H2 plus horizon that Ian just mentioned before. I will just give you some super quick example. Just a second, click. Okay, it's small, but the point is not to go in detail because we can really, and maybe one day we will do it, run a 5-day workshop about how we use AI. The idea of creating post-its is something that Ian already did, and it was the first attempt. I tell you, some of the answers were so long, and it would have been really, really hard for people to unpack them. So in a way, asking AI to do it and then have human validating was very quick to push them to do something straight ahead, interesting, and at the same time starting to validate, is it getting it right? The clustering also was done by human, and we tried, of course, to see clustering done by artificial intelligence. And this is where we started to learn something really interesting, because if you give all the post-its as created to the AI and then you ask clustering, maybe you can have some cluster that are different from what came out from the evaluators, yet still valid, because you can cluster things in so many different ways according to your perspective. So what we started to learn was the importance to specify perspective in our work. And at some point, we even started to record the discussion then evaluators did in clustering and revising, and asking AI to first surface the assumption and then use those assumptions for clustering. And this became really, really interesting because it was about understanding that AI goes basically mainstream, and what matters is our worldview. And in a way, we can push it. We ask, creating system, I think, is a level of sophistication that AI cannot still do, but it was incredibly good at reading the system. So when you saw this map, that was very hard to make sense of, I threw it as a drawing to artificial intelligence, and it was fantastic in reading it out with systemic view, in understanding, loops within that, loops about power, loops about methodology, loops about things. So it proved up to be fantastic at reading, and is going to prove in very, very good in generating narratives. We are also using it aside the main process because we realize as we started to do the work that sub-communities are quite interested in the findings. So there is the community working on evaluation capacities, the people working on technology, the people working on environment. So AI is very helpful now in accelerating, extracting specific issues and processing them from the data set. This is what I call insight digger. So in short, could the AI, couldn't we just ask the AI. We've been working on this data set for months now, okay? And it's been a lot of discussion, it's been a lot of work. So couldn't we just have saved time and putting the data into AI and say, can you please write a report for us? The short answer is largely yes. And I think a lot of the meaning would still have been maintained, but not the depth, not the conversation, not the fact that you have a community of evaluators that have been looking at those issues, have been working with them, have been sharing their worldview. And along the process, we have been trying to see to what extent AI got it right, got it wrong, and so on. So we really work it as a way to, in some cases, validate the human, in some cases, validate the limits and the possibilities of the AI, and in many cases to think not just can we put the data and have a report, but rather to jump into something more interesting, that is, how can we push our analysis further, because now there is AI that can assist us and not just doing the evaluation for us. Done.
Thanks, Silva. That's brilliant. Really, really good. There. When we started this process, and I'd not met Silva before, I had to say very openly, I will make myself have an open mind about the use of AI here. I will force myself to do it, because I've had some rather unfortunate experience with AI where it didn't impress me very much. My open mind has been opened up by what Silva does with AI, and I'm very excited by it. What we're going to do right now is look at the emerging 3 horizons maps that we've got. I'm going to do the first slide only, and I'll pass it across to Scott, and then Sibo, and then Andrea Lisa. Here's the overview. Horizon 1. This is what we see as the meta view of Horizon 1. Evaluation is not effective in addressing or voicing the deepening polycrisis and the transformations required. That's how we see it right now. Horizon 3, remember we go Horizon 1, Horizon 3, and then Horizon 2. In Horizon 3, 10 years out, now, in that world, all evaluation contributes to transforming social ecological systems towards a just and regenerating planet. That's the shift we want to get to. How are we going to get there? Here again is the big overview. People engaged with or inspired by evaluation are leading and taking the power to change the evaluation field to transform social ecological systems for a just and regenerating planet, right towards that third horizon. So what I'm going to do right now is pass control for the slide deck to Scott. You should now have it, Scott, who will take us through what's happening with Horizon 1. Roughly 5 minutes each for each speaker. Thanks, Scott. Off you go.
Okay, I'm hoping everyone can hear me, and thank you, Ian. Actually, Ian briefly shared with you the roadmap for Horizon 1, and he just went over the main message, which is basically looking at where the field of evaluation is now. It's not fit for purpose, and that's what you're seeing on the left there, and you can also see there. The survey questions are also on the left. And all I would say about the survey, it looks at, what's worth keeping, what should we reconsider, what led to the current situation, what major trends in evaluation. And that question number 3, what led, is sometimes called Horizon 0. What led up to the current horizon, Horizon 1. So we did look not just at where we are currently, but some of how we got here. Now, this animation can be, a 60-floor elevator speech. I'm going to try to cut it down to 30 floors and keep it quick, but there is quite a bit of, you'll see, stuff to be looking at. And I'm going to show the connections as I go along as well. So the first cluster, if you want to call it, is domination of deep embedded systems. And this is looking specifically more at the negative systems, exploitive worldviews, reductionist, simplistic or patriarchal views, funder-driven and vulnerable, and this is looking at how it makes evaluation vulnerable to the prevailing reductionist approach, and in kind of evaluation falling into that trap of being more tick box accountability exercise maybe than actually accountability to the larger system or planet in which the intervention's being delivered. Powered inequality as well between different stakeholder groups, and that will relate later to the indigenous rights and local power group, which come up. The next box there is management and policy integration, trying to basically, is evaluation actually having an impact or an effect on the management policy decision makers that it's trying to have an effect on? And related to that, the timing and rigor of evaluation methods. You can make sure you're on mute, folks, just so you don't talk over me. And these two things here are very related, interrelated. And I just clicked to the bottom right, the indigenous rights and local power, which is clearly related to that first cluster, domination of deep embedded systems, that I shared. But as you can see, it's also related to what degree do we, oh, that will show up right now as I click. Yeah, well, it will show up, there we go. It's also related to the degree to which post-truth politics are playing into all of this as well, which is the just the dis and misinformation that's out there and how it's affecting work towards transformational change or addressing the poly crisis. In the top right, again, very much connected to the other ideas, is the use of complex systems analysis in evaluation, which involves by default having multiple perspectives. That's part of complex systems analysis. So that's the indigenous perspectives, the local perspectives, and not just the dominant perspectives, which I started off with. And it's looking at how that can then inform or relate to the post-truth and management and policy integration, as well as critical dilemma and rigorous time, the methods that we use. And then the last cluster that I'm going to share is in a way looking at different evaluation competencies that people that took the survey identified need to be looked at more carefully and addressed. One box in there is evaluation values and positionality. Another box is the inadequate use of methods. And here we can throw in there, for example, the degree which evaluation is focusing on attribution analysis versus contribution analysis, and what might be more appropriate for given the complex systems in which the poly crisis is unfolding and evaluations trying to help address that. Critical thinking and technical skills, inclusion of technology. I'd also like to point out and probably end with, in that top left box, inadequate use of methods. At the very bottom of that, you'll see futures thinking. And this 3 Horizon exercise is actually part of the International Evaluations Academy of bringing futures thinking more into evaluations practice by flipping it right onto and looking at the field of evaluation itself. Okay, I'll stop there and pass it on to the next speaker.
So next we're going to have Sibongile dealing with Horizon 3.
Sorry if the shared screen keeps zooming a bit. I will now pass the remote control to Sibongile. There you go. You should have it now, Sibongile. Oh, flipping heck.
Ian, I think at this stage, let's just you do the next two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too the remote is too slow.
Okay. So Sibo, I'll click and give me a nudge if I'm not clicking at the right point for you, okay?
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you, Scott. So as mentioned earlier, I'll be discussing Horizon 3, which basically looks at what we want to see in the next 10 years, or how evaluation practice is going to look like and feel like in the next 10 years. And one of the questions that was brought up in the survey was us finding out about the pockets of the future or things that are happening in the present now that we feel like can contribute to the aspirational future that we would want. So we are saying in the next 10 years, after we have addressed the challenges that Scott has addressed in Horizon 1, evaluation will contribute to transforming social ecological systems towards a just and regenerating planet. And how are we going to arrive to this? Okay, you can click next one, Ian. We are saying, firstly, evaluation is addressing the polycrisis systematically across policy and organizational cycles, and is also valued by wider society. We're saying that evaluation has to continuously evolve, which means we have to foster learning and include strategy development. We're also saying that in the next 10 years, evaluation will be well integrated across policy and organizational cycles, which then leads to a timely manner of the utilization of the findings and also improve decision making. So I'm not going to delve much on the arrows because just like Scott had mentioned, they do show the interlinkages or interconnectedness of the clusters. So the next cluster, it speaks about how evaluation will be honoring Indigenous peoples, local communities, and nature as rights holders. Now, I'm sure we can all agree that we have arrived in this situation because as humans, we've been quite selfish and very greedy. We have ignored and neglected fauna and flora as part of our ecosystem. And we are saying in the next 10 years, evaluation will uphold nature as a rights holder. When we're talking about Indigenous peoples and local communities, we're also saying that their voices have been marginalized. And in terms of decision making, they've mostly been excluded. And in the next 10 years, we are honoring Indigenous peoples. We are including them in terms of decision making and also in terms of evaluations. And the next cluster speaks to the rebalancing of power, voice, and justice. Now, I'm sure if you follow the news, you did watch the conversation or meeting, whatever you want to call it, between the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and the US President Donald Trump. And the conversation that happened around that was, it was very apparent that there is a power imbalance. There's a power dynamic in play there. And what usually happens then is we see this globally in a political field, but that trickles down to our societies, that trickles down to our communities, which then affect decision-making. It then affects evaluation as a practice. So we are saying in the next 10 years, we're hoping that evaluation will be able to recenter this power balance between the global South and the global North. We're also saying that evaluation will embed equity because we are currently still dealing with gender inequalities, income inequalities, economic development, and we are saying evaluation practice will be able to challenge these unequal power structures and also to be able to bring about the transformation that is required. And then the next cluster, it speaks about evaluation being a depth for a time of transformation, and whether it's technically, politically, or strategically. And we've already heard from Silva how we've incorporated AI. And I think it would be inane for evaluation practice at this point to ignore the emergence of new technologies or AI. So it is important that moving forward, we are including or we are incorporating these new technologies, these ongoing innovations to advance our field. One thing that I usually like when Ian speaks about AI, Ian Goldman, he always says that if AI or new technologies are placed in the wrong hands, it may lead to detrimental effects. But if put in the right hands, it can lead to positive results. So we are saying if evaluators or people in evaluation practice can use these innovations, we can then bring about transformation that is equitable and positive results. We're also saying that evaluation must continue evolving, must also include other disciplines like systems thinking, AI, and future fit evaluation approaches. And one aspect that I do like and that I want to really emphasize on is we can't continue doing business as usual and expect something different in the next 10 years. So it is important that our mindsets and values shift in a way that can support or include decision-making that's regenerative. So it is important as evaluators, whether a commissioner, a manager, or just a user of evaluation, it is important that our mindsets and values align with what can bring transformation that is positive and regenerative. And then the last one, the last cluster speaks to skilled evaluator availability. If you recall from Scott's slide, where he was mentioning that we do lack capacity in terms of skilled evaluators, some lack the competencies, and we're saying in the next 10 years, the demand for skilled evaluators will be met with the supply, with evaluators that have both the soft skills, the technical skills, and that can be applied in any context. And that's about it for Horizon 3. I will then pass over to Andrelisa, who's going to discuss Horizon 2.
Just as we pass it across to Andrelisa for Horizon 2, please bear in mind that we describe Horizon 3 as an aspirational future, the future that we aspire to help unfold and bring into being, rather than it being a forecast. This is what we are trying to help bring into being. So that's where we're trying to get to. We've looked at Horizon 1, which is where are we? Now, the big thing is Horizon 2. I'll pass across to Andrelisa. How are we going to get there?
Thank you so much. The survey questions that we used to construct this map are on the side. And I invite you who are participating today to ask yourself these questions as well. What is happening now that can help bring about an evaluation field that is contributing to addressing the polycrisis? What do you see happening now? What are you participating in? What would you like to see? That was the next question. What needs to be happening in the next 10 years? And then what principles, what mindset, knowing that a worldview change is a deep transformational lever. What mindsets and principles do we need to be embedding our systems change within? And yes, and so together, what we are calling for is a democratization and distributed leadership in the field, rooted in sociological understanding of what well-being is and for whom. And as Sibo beautifully said, it's about all of nature, all beings and humans as part of that. And that is the basis for collective thriving, both equitable as well as sustainable. This change is going to be requiring a repositioning and a rebalancing of power. And so the decolonial imperative is very strong in Horizon 2, and bringing about more relationality, both among groups of humans, also as Sibo noted, the global North, global South dynamic, the geopolitical dynamic. And then as we've been talking about this, it's just so important to realize the decolonial work in global North and the Indigenous peoples in global North, and also the the legacy of enslavement in global North as well, and healing that and working decolonially with that. And so I would like to point to the Global Eval Indigenous Network that's part of Eval Partners, and that is Indigenous peoples around the world who are working by, for, and as their own traditional rights holder groups in evaluation. And the declaration that they have put forward that links to the worldviews and the principles that need to be guiding this work. And that is to uphold Indigenous rights, protect knowledge sovereignty, and mobilize Indigenous paradigms. And so that's an example of how the way that H2 is going forward, and the participation of the Academy in that is participatory, is synergistic and participatory in a way that's not competitive, but is very much based on good relationships. So the reciprocity of positionality in the field and changes in the field itself is something that the arrows are showing, and the way that evaluation needs to be embedded across sectors in civil society, in public service and government, and then in the private sector with all of the changes in financial regulation and financial reform to be more climate and nature friendly and more socially responsible. So evaluation needs to be part of that. We have shifts and movement in the mindsets and definitions of professionalization in evaluation, the standards, ethics, competencies, and also removing gatekeeping and inequities within that. And then finally, the whole picture of the who, why, and how to move from what is to what we aspire to be is summarized in the box that talks about the relationship with technology, different rights holder groups, the systems thinking and foresight, and collaboration across boundaries. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so now you can stop sharing now, Ian.
I can do that.
And now we're going to just ask you to reflect. Actually, sorry. So just show the Mentimeter slide, Ian. Sorry.
Okay.
Because it's
Give me a
code on
moment. Yeah, it's okay. Hang on.
and then we can show people.
Well,
So
use
I'm
that-
going to invite you to go on your phones, probably on your phones, onto menti.com and enter the code 1353. Okay. Ish. Whoops. And you should get this question: does the overall picture that emerges make sense? So can you put your responses in? And the code, if you're not sure, the code is at the top there. If you haven't got the code, sorry, I'm not actually sharing, which I need to be sharing. Will you stop sharing, Ian? Ian, will you stop sharing now? Yep. There we go. It's the Menti. So we're seeing make some sense. Quite a lot of people make a lot of sense, and interesting that quite a lot of people would like to work on taking this forward. By the way, we're going to come back later to talk about collaboration. So do think about the ways and the areas that you think are interesting and areas that you might be interested to collaborate in. Okay, so we've still got something like 15, 20 people to add. It's obviously a lot to take in this short period of time. What we will be doing afterwards is we'll have all your email addresses, and we will send you the PowerPoint and with the maps so that you can follow up and look at them in more detail. Okay, let's wait a bit longer. So we're on 1823. We're still about About 10 of you haven't responded yet. Be good to get a better picture. So as a minimum, it's making some sense. You can some of you are, about half of you are saying it makes a lot of sense, and some of you would like to collaborate on taking it forward, which is great. Give you a minute or so more. Okay, I think we're getting a picture here. What I'm going to do now is invite you to say what struck you. I mean, when you looked at those three maps, whether it's Horizon 1, the current situation, Horizon 3, where we would like to be in 10 years' time, or Horizon 2, how we get there, what struck you? Just put some of your observations. What struck you? We will, by the way, we will capture this will be captured, and we will share it with you afterwards as well. So amazing technology, it's aspirational. Localization, shifting the power, yeah, absolutely central. It's overwhelming, yeah. It is a lot to take in, which is why we're going to send we will send it to you later to look at. Work to be done, integration of AI, empowerment of local imaging and power dynamics, dominant systems, mapping not only of what is, but also why it is. Integrative power balance as a key. Decolonization, Merle, yeah. Linking evaluation to a public good and nature conservation. In fact, what's coming through is more than nature's conservation. It's actually rights of nature. So it's a very strong view. We tend to take a very human-centered view, but actually our survival depends on nature surviving and thriving. Systems thinking, local evaluators, plural value systems, doing an evaluation on evaluation. Efficiency, systems thinking, foresight works in practice, technology integration, sorting out work seems to embrace everything it can't do. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, you can carry on adding to that if you would like to. Do keep this open, because I'm going to ask you a final question right at the end of the session. So you don't need to close this on your phone, but I'm now going to stop sharing. But you can carry on and carry on putting things. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to hand over to Jen, who's going to indicate what we're going to do next.
Hi, everyone. So we have been introduced to these three system maps. And as you remember in the beginning, Ian Kendrick gave us kind of that view of the three horizons and how they interact together. And so we are now wanting to give everyone here and for us to kind of co-create and co-identify together those initiatives that help us move into the third horizon. So these are the H2+ initiatives that are initiatives that either already exist in some form in the present, or they could be initiatives that you feel really need to come into being, that they are necessary to help us in that movement. And so to think a little bit about what these initiatives might be, Zenda Ophir has given quite a lot of thought to some characteristics and qualities of how we can be thinking about H2+ initiatives. And these 5 here are a small sample of some of the thinking. But wanting just to, as we start stimulating our ideas about this, wanting to give some guidance to help us think about these initiatives. So what's really critical is that these initiatives need to be capable of maintaining an independent existence over time. So they need to be able to resist capture from the status quo or from H1. So if you remember in that map, there's the H2- initiatives, and those are initiatives that get kind of sucked back into H1. So these need to be able to maintain resistance to H1 and really are there to bring us forward into H3. These initiatives need to be able to shift system dynamics towards the new H3 paradigm. They need to be able to demonstrate and lay a foundation for the aspirational future. So we want to see them as not just incremental improvements or alternatives that operate alongside existing structures. They may be to some extent, but really they need to be there guiding us towards that aspirational future. And in that, they need to embody the action of those desired future values that we saw in the H3 map. And then finally, to focus on the deep reasons for the systemic problems. So in the H1 map that Scott showed us, there were those gray boxes that really were trying to go really deep down into the underlying reasons and that for those problems, because if we don't address those, then those same problems will keep emerging, keep resurfacing, even as we go towards H3. So with those brief characteristics of what we're looking for in terms of H2 initiatives, we now have a space where we can just start identifying, start brainstorming, co-ideating some initiatives. So in the chat, we would like you to, if you have existing initiatives in mind, to start putting those down into in the chat with a name of the initiative. If you have a web link for that initiative, that would be great. If it's a new idea, please describe that idea and why you think it is something that would bring us into that ideal third horizon that we are looking for. And we would like your emails with both. And while we're having the conversation, so you can put this into the chat, but we also encourage you to unmute and use your voice and voice out your ideas with us. And while we're having this conversation, Ian Kendrick is putting this into a mural. We were going to show the map. Are you doing it on the? We're going to do it here. So we can see on the mural the second Horizon 2 with all of the different boxes and the linkages. And he will put the ideas that we're putting down into these either the yellow being what exists already or into the green the new initiatives. And in the chat is that same kind of those 5 characteristics are in the chat also for your reference if you feel the need for those.
Yeah.
So I have one to add. It is an existing initiative, and it does go towards the one about repositioning power. And so this is a collaboration by GENSA, which Sonal is involved in. GENSA, Praxis India, and Global Change Center. I'll put it down in the chat, but so basically they've developed a self-assessment tool for funders to it's called Moving the Needle and Bringing Equity into Evaluations. And it's for funders to reassess their power dynamics and really be aiming towards having a much more equitable, rebalanced relationship with their partners. So I'll put that in the chat now.
I'll, if it's okay, I'll keep this share screen open. So if things go in this chat, I will put them in the URL and you can see that they are there.
So there's another one in the chat about the DPME and SEMEA evaluation criteria, one on transformative equity and one on the climate and ecosystems health. Then Leila has put in the Canada Water Agency is approaching modernization of the Canada Water Act as part of United Nations Declaration Act. And this is a significant engagement and resources put aside to have First Nations, Metis, and Inuit as part of the reworking of this act. I do want to encourage other voices. People can also say out the what they're putting into the chat.
Hi, it's Ishmael. I'm not sure if it's already included, but I'm just thinking about, of course, I also noticed or realized you spoke about colonization summer, but I'm also thinking of language specifically. I'm not sure if that is included. I think it's also a big challenge currently, and I think in the future, we should have evaluation that is friendly to everyone in terms of language.
Mm-hmm. And so in what way can you describe that a little bit more? I think that's a very good point, but is it
Okay, yeah.
meaning
Yeah,
that
yeah.
there needs to be something that is enabling people to understand each other in different languages, or is it, yeah, please explain.
Okay, yeah. I think the first part is definitely in terms of engagement and communication of evaluation material. So it's engagement, the data collection process where we engage people who benefit from the projects, but also communicating the findings. So I think what we want in the future is a system that allows everyone to have access to information, and they're able to contribute to that, to the evaluation process.
Okay, that's great. I'm trying to put something into the chat, but you can also, if you want to articulate that into the chat, it might be better for you to do that than for me to try to interpret your. but I think that's a great point. And is maybe not well covered. I think there's some of that that's covered in some of the H2. But we welcome your point to be expressed in the chat for us to put in. So Mina is asking whether we'll share these approaches and processes with the slide deck. And so what we'll do is so at the moment, Ian K is putting them into these boxes, and then we'll work towards trying to place them if they in certain parts of the map to help us show that transition into H3. And so does anybody have any examples of existing initiatives that are working towards perhaps the competencies area and particularly also around values that is helping to make the link? There's a section within the three horizons around the types of skills that evaluators need.
I could share from the Canadian Evaluation Society. We have, and I put in the chat, a link to our core values. So we have an attestation for all CES members to uphold our core values, and they include attending to the rights and well-beings of all people, persons, and all of nature. And truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in Canada is part of that commitment. And then our competency framework, that's the basis for our credentialed evaluator program, also includes coupled human and natural systems impacts that the competency to assess that. Now, the challenge is now to provide professional development and develop theories and models and so on that are fit for purpose. And that's part of the collaboration that footprint evaluation and Blue Marble evaluation and the International Academy and Eval Partners and everyone here, that we're all part of that, not only seeing the aspiration, but then figuring out the tools and the skills and the infrastructure to achieve it.
That's great. That's a nice example. Ian K,
Yes.
evaluation is use-driven, enabling stakeholders to contribute, communicate. That should be, I think, like a new initiative. So
Okay, got it.
Ishmael, you didn't have an example. It's not something that exists, right? It's more something that you feel needs to come into being.
Yes.
My apologies.
And are there other ideas people might have of that are new, things that we don't necessarily see existing, but that should come into being? And Andrea Lisa, is there anything further with the the different groups that you were talking about, Eval partners. I always see the global agenda. Should those
Well,
be
if
part of the
well,
initiative phrase?
a shout out to President Khalil of the IOCE and Eval partners. He's been very forthcoming in looking at more coordination and collaboration, specifically in actions that need to happen and the alignment of the new global agenda with some of the thinking that's embedded in the Three Horizons work that's been happening. So yeah, definitely the need for the 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 greatly proliferated evaluation infrastructure, especially in this time where the funding landscape is changing, that cooperation and synergy is more important than ever. So those relationships among some of the key networks is really important. And looking at how to work with non-financial resources and with in-kind contributions as well, by just sharing knowledge and sharing tools and platforms and so on, is something that I think is being done really well with this Three Horizons project. But also closer to home, recognizing that dedicated time and dedicated positions, mentoring and shadowing opportunities for young and emerging evaluators, and evaluators who are coming, from other fields mid-career, that needs to be something that we create opportunities for, and so that people don't need to wait until they are successful in being hired on the basis of having skills and experience, that there's actually positions that are entry level where they can get that experience and develop those skills. It's definitely something that would help achieve some of the aspirations.
Great. Okay, in terms of time, I think we can, I don't know if you, Ian K, want to go over any of this, or I think people are able to see what you've been putting down. And we can talk a little bit about our next steps and ways that we want to keep the audience engaged.
So we're seeing this, and we're going to be asking you to continue to put your thinking juices, and to continue to think of ideas and send us ideas of the of initiatives that you think have the potential to be transformational. There, as Jen said, pockets of the future in the present. Okay. So I think we can move to the slide. So now let me just.
I've got it, Ian.
Yeah, go on.
That one.
So we're going to be talking. So what I want to talk about is the next steps, and so yeah, so we will share the maps and presentation with you, and what I'm hoping is that this will stimulate you to start thinking about what do you know that you think is innovative, that could help us, because what we want to do is build on these. We want to be appreciative, building on what's already happening. Yes, identifying new areas where new areas are needed, and using that to build work packages, which I'll come back to. So we're going to also be working on a story map so that you can engage a story map. So in other words, it's the story of the three maps that you've seen, but where you can move backwards and forwards in it so that you can sort of go through that story at your leisure. And we will be building that and putting it on the website so that you can interact at your leisure with that. So as well as sharing with you what's come out today, we're going to have another webinar on the 3rd and 4th of July, the third of which is going to be focusing on just go back, Ian, sorry. The 3rd of July, which will be sort of Western Hemisphere time zones, and the 4th of July, which will be Eastern Hemisphere's time zone. So we're making sure we can also bring in East Asia. Romeo, I know it's pretty late for you now, for example. So we can, bring in China, Japan, Australasia, etc., the Pacific. So do sort of, you will be kept in contact. Do suggest to others that they might want to do this. And we will use that webinar to further identify and potential initiatives. And so in this work, we're moving to this stage now where we're going from communicating what's emerged to trying to identify the initiatives which can help us take us forward. And so these initiatives we will be using to build a series of work packages that we think can be transformational, that can take this transformational systems change work forward. And we will be seeking to collaborate with organizations which could be your organization. So we're looking to hear from you about things where you see a potential for that. And also from the maps, whether there are particular areas within those maps that you are particularly interested in and you think could be particularly, where maybe, for example, you've got some innovative work that you think could be shared as well and that we could be building on. Next, Ian.
Yeah.
So we are also, we're doing a special edition of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation, and Scott and myself and Sonal, who was meant to be here on this call today, but she's ill, and a woman called Tania de la Garza from Mexico will be the main editors for it. And we're going to have about 15 or 16 articles, which are exploring many of the issues that we've raised in these maps. And so we're using this to try and develop in-depth thinking about many of the blocks, the clusters, or several of these blocks and clusters, so that it's got a richness and a depth which can then help inform how we need to be taking the work forward. We'll also be, and that work will be published in around February next year, but we're going to start exploring what's emerging in webinars and testing out the ideas, groups working on some of them to try and see how we can use that to test out, to prototype, to learn as we go. They're very much in an emergent process. We will also continue to refresh the maps. The maps are quite different from the original maps that we produced. We will continue to do that. We want to work with Eval Indigenous to look specifically at Indigenous perspectives at this, which might result in quite significant changes to these. And then doing this Three Horizons work is also in itself an exercise in using foresight tools. And so there's learning around use of foresight tools. And we're also going to be testing out some of this and some of the transformational change that we're trying to carry out at a transformations community event in August, which will actually be in South Africa. Because what we're doing here is trying to use evaluation as a tool for transformational change and use the maps to try and think, where does that transformational change, what direction does it need to take? We can't say these are the specific endpoints, but we can say that's a direction. And then how do we work in an emergent way towards that direction? Okay, so next one in. Okay, so now if you go back to your phone, and I'm going to, if you go back to your phone, and then I'm just going to, let me share the, go back to sharing the Mentimeter. Oops. Let me get the, there we go.
Got it, Ian. Got it. There you go.
Just let me share it.
I've got it shared now if you want it.
I know, it just,
Okay.
Okay, so that was what struck you. Okay, and I'm not sure if any of you added any more to it. Okay, that looks like a last one on the next page. Okay, so now, how are you feeling about taking this agenda forward? Okay, just put some words. It's a word cloud, so just a couple of a word or two on how you're feeling about taking this agenda forward. Sibongile, also, can you put your email address in the chat? If you have a particular, so do carry on putting these words in here, but also if there are particular areas of interest that you've got, please put it in the chat and put obviously your name, and then if you have further ideas for initiatives, if you could send them to Sibongile, and the address will be in the chat. Meanwhile, carry on putting your words, your checkout words in the Mentimeter. I really like this curious, because to me, this is not a future. Although with the H3, we've given a direction, we do not know what's going to happen in the world. And so we can say that's a direction we want to go towards, but we have to work in an emergent way towards that. And in that process, be curious about what we can build on, and what approaches will work. So I really like that word, curious. And again, the word emergent and optimistic, yeah. And also, we're going through very uncertain times, but it's through collaborative work like this that we can help to create a future. And in the same process, we can safeguard our mental health and safeguard the mental health of the communities that we're in, because there's much that's happening now which is very depressing and very negative. But actually, it's also got the seeds of the future, the pockets of the future that we can build on. Great. Any more last points in here? And I'm just looking in the chat to see whether we have some. Yeah, so just invite you to just in the chat, if there are areas of collaboration. Sibo, if let me just check, you have put your, yeah, so Sibongile's put her email in the chat. Please take that email, and if over the next few days, things are occurring to you, please email Sibongile and send her and say, and again, very much what's the initiative about or you think should happen, who would be a contact person for it, and if there's a web link, give a web link. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you to everybody. I'd like to give yourselves all a big round of applause. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in the world. Please share with us things that you're doing which you think may make a difference, and go well. Enjoy the rest of the local week, and we hope to be interacting with you in the future going forward. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.